Well, come to the end. Or the beginning. Certainly the end of today's discussions. Anyway. So I want to talk to you just in the end because I want to talk to you about using your will to love in the world. Right at the beginning, remember, if you cast your mind back to the beginning talk that we gave on that Saturday morning, you remember we talked about God's definition of love versus the world's definition of love. Remember that? And we talked about the need to receive our education from a higher source, because the sources of education that are available in the world that we live in are generally not higher than our own condition. And so we need to receive education from another source. Now, obviously, if I use my will to receive this education from a higher source and receive this education in what real love really is, my own condition will improve. If my own condition improves, then that means my condition of love will be better than the general condition of love in the world. So if you really loved other people, what would you then do with that condition? Surely you would share it, wouldn't you, in the world? Now, one thing I like about this world is there's lots and lots of opportunities to share love. There are just so many. Like, it's almost limitless how many opportunities there are to share love in the world we live in. So if I'm developing my will to love and then using it in the world, you will actually create so many different things that are not now existing on the planet to share your love with the world. There's literally businesses and empires of businesses that you could create to share love in the world. Not that you might receive a lot of money from creating them, but you will probably find that you may, because these particular things, as they're shared, people will appreciate the sharing of them. They will express their gratitude for the sharing of them. And this is where I see there's not much faith either. There's not much faith that if we get into a better condition and we begin to engage some of these processes of sharing some of these things that we could create in the world, sharing more love in the world, using our will, engaging it in the world, then what will happen is things will markedly change for us and the world itself. That's your opportunity. You have huge opportunities ahead of you if you have a condition of love that's higher than the condition of the world. Now, most of you haven't been looking at it that way. Most of you have been looking at it as if you grow in love, the world will attack you and the world will abuse you and the world will make your life more difficult and the world's going to, just pull you down and denigrate you and you're going to be disapproved of and you're going to, people are going to treat you terribly and your family won't like you anymore and your friends won't like you anymore. You lose everything and you've got all these negative things going on in your minds, all coming from the past. All coming from these unhealed emotional states, all coming from the doubt and disillusionment that exists within you. And you're implying that if you get into a better condition and start doing some of these more positive things in the world, that actually things are not going to work out well for you at all. And completely the opposite is the case. Because you'll be living in harmony with God's laws. And any person who lives with harmony with God's laws bears the benefit of doing so. Right? So what I see is like the world is here in terms of its condition of love, right? God's love is infinitely greater than that. But let's say you receive just a smidgen, just a little bit of God's love, and you happen to be at this level of love. And then in that process, you decide to use your will to create some things, to create maybe a business that shares something with the world because you can see the world needs this particular thing, and so you create a business to do it. And many of you are thinking in boxes still because you're limited by the fears and your lack of action and also the lack of truth and the lack of love and the lack of faith in your life. But imagine if you remove these boxes, which are like prisons, they're like bars that guard your prison, your own prison actually, and you remove them. Now you have the freedom to grow a whole heap of things that don't exist in the world. Now, for some of you, that'll be technological things. For some of you, it'll be scientific things. For some of you, it'll be medical things. For some of you, it'll be practical things like helping other people in different ways. For some of you, it will be even just with day-to-day life. For some of you, it will be building things. And for some of you, it will be living things. And for some, I could list a whole heap of endeavours that all would be in a higher condition of love. And you could choose to engage these processes in the world. Right? You could. And why don't you? Isn't it just those fears, the lack of faith, the desire to not act because you're afraid of what might happen? Isn't it just your fear that people may attack you or harm you or abuse you? Isn't it your fear of being first? Isn't it your fear, those fears that are stopping you from taking these particular actions? So if you have received some of this education in love and you get to be in a different condition of love, like you have a large number of potential things you could choose to do. Some of you will author books. Some of you will produce videos. Some of you will, like I said, build buildings. Some of you will design a different way of living, a different lifestyle. Some of you will design different technology. Some of you will do all sorts of things. But it depends upon your development in love as to how those things will come about and how you'll engage them. Now, you know what most people want to do when they start connecting with some kind of spiritual philosophy? You know what they do? They create a group, right? And that particular group, like it might be a religious group or it might be some kind of environmental group or whatever it is, but all of them are really religious or religions in a way. They're all groups, and we create a group, and then all the people of that particular group all get together and they spend time with each other, and very rarely do they share what they do with anybody else. And if it's a religious group, they have very strict guidelines as to how they should share, and they have certain judgments of other people and so forth that prevent them from sharing what they know or what the resources are with the world. So if it's a Christian religious group, they might not share it with a Muslim group, or if it's a Hindu group, it might not share it with a Buddhist group. And if it happens to be a group that doesn't believe in abortion, then it won't share it with the people who've had abortions and so forth. And so we end up with all these groups, all with what we would classify as special interest groups that have some benefit in the world because they're all trying to do some good. But because of their judgments and their unwillingness to address their unhealed emotional states and their fear and their unwillingness to engage God's truth and their unwillingness to have faith in God's goodness and their unwillingness to take action, of course, it just ends up being much the same as what we've already got in the world. You have an opportunity to change that. You have an opportunity to actually engage a whole new philosophy where you're willing to help everyone in the world, no matter what their background and their situation. And the only time that you stop interacting with people in the world is because they're being unloving to you or to others. That's the only time you withdraw from them. The rest of the time, you do whatever you can to share these things that you learn with the world in all sorts of ways. And some of you don't recognise you have passions in different directions yet, but once you recognise those passions and directions, you'll realise that there's a whole slew of things that you can do to share what you know with the world. Instead of just living your own current, mundane, to be frank, life. Right? You can do a whole heap of things in the world. But to do that, you're going to have to learn to be brave and courageous. To do that, you're going to have to exercise your will like other people don't. You're going to have to choose to do something different than the average person does in order to do that. But that's your opportunity. Music, art, technology. There's unexplored areas of discovery that we haven't even discovered as a human race, and you could be a person who leads that discovery because you're open to hearing from spirits and other people who know about those particular things. Right? There's a whole, like I'm saying, the opportunities are like immense. But we have to want to do it in the world, rather than just create our own little group where we all just sit together in our own safety, in our own comfort, in our own comfort, and we just talk to each other and we don't share with anything with anybody else. We don't create something that benefits the world there. All we do is we become another group. You see? Now, a person who truly loves doesn't do that. That's why every time you've tried to make me do that, I've resisted doing it. Right? Every time you want me to set up a group and lead a group, I have eventually pulled the pin on that. Right? Because what we do needs to benefit the whole world. Doesn't it? It does. Not only the whole world of humankind on earth, but also the world of spirits who are also earthbound, and also the world of spirits that are in the hells of the spirit world. All of them need to be benefited by what we do. And we could choose to take actions that do that if we use our will to love in the world. All right. So I've almost said enough about that subject, don't you think?